Hi, dear ones. This is episode 200 of Soul Guide Radio. And it's actually somewhere around in the 350th episode of all my podcasts combined. But today we're celebrating 200 episodes specifically from Soul Guide Radio, my third podcast that I've launched. And I have been on a wild ride this last summer. So I thought about what would I really most want to talk about in this 200th episode? And the word that came to me, I got one word, which was flow. And I love podcasting the most when I'm just in a flow and it's just flowing. The divine is just flowing through me into your earbuds, giving you exactly what you need in this moment, in highest service to you, giving you something that's going to give you a snippet of transformation, that's going to inspire you, heal you, give you a different perspective, offer you some know-how that maybe you didn't have before, to simply make your life better, to get you some results, to help you feel good. So that is my intention for this episode. I don't know what's going to flow through. And so before we get in today's episode, I am going to start out with a listener review. And if you would like to give Soul Guide Radio some love and appreciation on this 200th episode, I would be so grateful. I would read your review on the air and I would send you some extra love energetically through the airwaves to say thank you for taking the time. So today's review comes from Fearless Gem in Canada, and she gives Soul Guide Radio 5 stars and calls it a grounding space for real growth. Ooh, I love that. And she or he or they say, Soul Guide Radio is a space that truly meets you where you are. Allison holds conversations that feel real, thoughtful, and deeply insightful, helping listeners pause, reflect, and reconnect with what matters. Oh, yes. Thank you, Fearless Gem. I do indeed intend and set the intention to do those things. So I'm so happy you're receiving them. And if you're feeling so called, head on over to the show notes. There is a link to leave a rating and review. There are different platforms. If you've left a review on one, you can leave a review on another. And you can also leave a second review. So if you do it on Apple Podcasts, I believe you just update your old review. So if you've done an old review on Apple Podcasts and you want to update it, I am certainly grateful. All right, so let's get to today's episode where I'm just in flow and I don't know what wants to flow through me. So in today's episode, I am in flow, and we'll end on an invitation that will have you in flow and feeling flow and in an alignment to flow. I'm not sure how, but we're going to find out. So please, I know you're going to want to stay with me until the end. Hello, Soul Guide Circle. We're creating a global community of soul-guided leaders, coaches, healers, and entrepreneurs. In the Soul Guide Circle, we're inviting in our spiritual gifts to get our clients even more results and transformation to create big referral buzz. Find a link to join our closed Facebook group at AllisonScammell.com or in the show notes. Today, we're celebrating 200 episodes of Soul Guide Radio, and I am in flow of what wants to come through. And it's been a crazy summer because my eldest daughter, Sophie, had brain surgery. And she is an epileptic. She has had epilepsy, since she was around 4 or 5 years old. And the intention of this brain surgery was to hopefully enable her to not have seizures anymore and to eventually stop taking medication. That's best case scenario. Good scenario is that she has less seizures and she can maybe get to a point where all of her seizures are managed through medicine. Because right now she's on medicine, but she's still having seizures. So we're hoping, and we won't know for another 6 months exactly what the outcome of this surgery is, but we are definitely praying that it is in some way makes her life better so she can have more freedom. And she just graduated from high school, so she can eventually move on to college and just do all the things college kids do with not having to worry about having a seizure. And with those seizures, you kind of have to have someone always keeping an eye on you. You just never know when a seizure is going to hit. And so Sophie's lucky. She's got a lot of really mature friends who are, really well capable of supporting Sophie when a seizure does come. But it would be great if she could just, get her driver's license and go swimming by herself and, do all the things that we take for granted, those of us who don't have to deal with things like seizures. And so I'm just sending so much love and support to her as she navigates through this and her recovery, which is going great so far. But to rewind a little bit, the hospital stay was pretty intense. And I think all of us were going in it really positive and excited because we had been talking about and planning for this surgery for so long. And really, especially Sophie and her biological mother, Mariella. I'm second mom, but I love her as if I birthed her myself. And especially Sophie and Mariella have been on this journey to preparing for this surgery. But my husband, Pete, and I have also been there at the major milestones. And we were all nervous about it, but also excited for what this surgery might be able to get Sophie. But, I believe that the three parents and Sophie would all agree that it was a much more intense experience than we had originally planned. We thought she was going to go in, have this surgery, and recover. But it ended up being she had to go in and put 19 electrodes in her brain. And these were electrodes, they were literally screwed into her skull, connected to various synapses in her brain so that they could monitor her brain activity and what actually happened when she had a seizure so that they would know exactly where to operate. So it's a pretty important part of the process, but that was such an uncomfortable situation for Sophie because she had this huge, heavy thing on her head. She looked like Marge Simpson. It was all wrapped in medical tape, but she had all these wires going into her head. It was really heavy. She couldn't stand up. She was bedridden. I just felt so badly for her. And she had that thing in for 10 days. And then they started to take her off her medicine so she'd have seizures. And then the poor thing had to endure seizures, knowing that they were coming. And the more medicine that they took away, the bigger the seizures got. And it was ultimately a good thing that she was having those seizures so they could record what was happening in the brain when the seizures were happening, so they knew where to operate. But it was just so uncomfortable. And I just felt so is there anything I could do to take this discomfort away from Sophie? Could I experience it myself? Whatever could I do? And the thing that was so incredible for me about that experience is how we three parents came together. And now Mariella was definitely, that's Sophie's mom, bio mom. She was definitely the number one person. And we all agreed it should be her. And she was pretty much by Sophie's side the whole time. But Pete and I also played an important role. And that was the thing, as a step parent, although I don't like the word step, I'm just a parent. But in that role, you always have to ask yourself, well, what's my role? I don't need to overlap and be redundant and kind of overwhelm what other people are already doing. I need to look at what's happening and plug in to what feels aligned for me and where I can really add value to the relationship. And to give myself a little credit, I believe I've more or less done that well throughout the years. Looked through and decided like where I can add enrichment and value as a parent to Sophie and Alexander's life. Alexander's my son, without overwhelming them, overlapping, being an energy of competition or any of that. I was like, listen, I'm a projector and I do not have extra energy for drama. I don't do drama. I don't like drama. I avoid it as much as I humanly possibly can. When I find myself accidentally stuck in drama, I immediately say, how did I get here? Get me out, get me out. So I'm always looking for the harmony of a situation, the harmony of a relationship. And what was so special to me was how I was treated in that hospital stay as an equal third parent. Sophie had 3 parents who were there loving her, supporting her. Each parent was coming in and doing their role, doing the thing that Sophie wanted from us and doing the thing that Sophie needed from us. And I was really in awe by how we were able to do that. And at a certain point, Sophie's mom, Mariella, was introducing me to a nurse. And she said, "This is Allison, Sophie's mom." I just get teary-eyed thinking about that. She said, "This is Sophie's mom." Can you imagine? She didn't say, "This is Sophie's stepmom," which is totally fine, because in that situation, that's what you'd say, because otherwise, would they think that Marielle and I could be in a couple together, for sure. I mean, we could be in a same-sex union together, whatever. So of course you need to use from time to time the clarifier. And she did say that later in the conversation. She did then reference me as stepmom, because Pete wasn't in the room at that point. But she just said, "Here is Allison, Sophie's mom." And I'll never forget that. I also feel like Mariella was really appreciative of me during that hospital stay. I was really concerned about Sophie and making sure that Sophie had what she needed and whatever I could give her. But I was also really worried about Mariella, because she was in the hospital room with Sophie the whole time, sleeping there at night. And of course, I said to her, "Mariella, I'll take a night if you want me to," but I knew she didn't want that, and that was okay. But of course, had she wanted to just spend a night sleeping in a hotel, of course, I would have taken a hospital night stay, but she didn't want that. But she knew, for whatever reason, had she needed a backup, that I would have been there in a heartbeat. But I think all that said, my point, what I'm getting to, is that Mariella appreciated me so much. And I really felt that. I felt that she was happy I was there. She felt supported by me because I was worried about her in a supportive way. Worried in the sense like, "Hey, Mariella, what do you need? Can I get you lunch? Do you need something from the pharmacy? How can I help? Oh, you're moving rooms. Can I watch the suitcases? What can I do to support you?" And I think she really felt that. She really received that. Like, wow, she felt really supported by me. And she communicated that to me. And at the end of the hospital stay, I really feel like she and I, who've always had a great relationship, that our relationship just up-leveled again to this next level of love and support. And here we are, 3 co-parents that love our children more than anything in the world. And we're just here to give them what they need in their growth and development, to feel loved and supported. And I just want to give our little blended family a little hat tip for how we have cultivated that through the years. And it's really special what we've created. And, I know a lot of blended families don't have that, or maybe you have aspects of that, but maybe you also have areas where you still really struggle. And so I'm in flow here. So what do I want to say to that? What I want to say to that is, or maybe, you're in a non-blended family, you're in a nuclear family, but you're also experiencing challenges with grandparents or in-laws or, fill in the blanks. Every family has their challenges, no matter what the family composition. I think sometimes blended families are a little bit like glass houses, and it's easy to throw stones and make judgments and assume things. That's much harder to do in a non-blended family because there are less glass walls, typically speaking, on a non-blended family. But every family has their challenges and their picadillos and the things that pop up. And when that happens, I guess I want to share with you, as I'm flowing through this episode, the message that came through from my higher self several months before the surgery. So to back up a little bit, Sophie graduated from high school in June, and she had the surgery in August. And as she was approaching high school graduation, I was starting to have a lot of anxiety and fear and second guessing and doubt about this transition from Sophie post high school, because she was going into adulthood. And every parent has to face the reality when your kids graduate and decide to move out of the house, whether they're going on to college or whatever whenever and wherever they transition to. And when they leave the nest, you're faced with the reality that you're going to see a lot less of them. Now, if they move down the street, you're still going to see them quite a lot. But wherever they move, it's never going to be as much as when they live under your roof. And the harsh reality that was hitting me was that Sophie never really lived under our roof because we're blended. And we always got the children on their school holidays. So we had them periodically throughout the year. And it was really hard because, of course, we always wanted to see more of them. And now I was faced with this reality that I was going to go from seeing her not very often to seeing her even less. And it just made me so sad. And it made me second guess everything. And it made me second guess my role in all of this. Like, what's the point? Not like what's the point, but more like what's my point? And really, what's my role? And really, do I have a role now? She's going off to college. She has her mom. They're super close. And she probably doesn't need me anymore, was what my ego mind was telling me. My wounding was telling me that. So as I started to talk to higher self and kind of heal some of these wounds and really explore into the question, what is my role now that she's transitioning into becoming a young adult? One message I got from my higher self was, take your ego out of it. And when the message first came through, I was like, okay, that's like a message you would have given me 5 years ago. I'm more advanced now. I already know to take my ego out of it. This is what my ego was saying. And I was a little bit annoyed at my higher self that they didn't give me a more sophisticated or nuanced or futuristic answer that I hadn't heard before. And oh, by the way, that is a reaction the ego will offer a lot to guidance coming from the divine. So whenever you notice yourself annoyed by guidance coming from the divine, you probably have some wounding or something that needs to be released. Because when you're in alignment, you're never annoyed by what the divine is giving you. So I was clearly out of alignment when the divine was coming in saying, take your ego out of it. But I did listen. And then I found myself feeling a lot better when I was taking my ego out of it and I was surrendering. And I was healing any fear blocks that were popping up or worry blocks that were popping up. I was feeling the feels, breathing, releasing. And then I just got this intuition that I knew I had a role to play. And that was sort of it. Like, I just knew the answer. Like, do I have a role? I knew the answer was yes. And I just kind of let it be. I didn't try to figure anything else out. I just let it be at that. And I really focused in on taking my ego out of it. So when I felt like, oh, what if I don't have a role? Or, oh, what if there are too many parents at the surgery, too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Oh, Sophie won't want me there. Oh, any of the thoughts that came up, I identified it as ego, thoughts and worries. Took some deep breaths, released anything that might need to be released, went back to my heart space, and I just was. I didn't even really get guidance. It was almost like I knew without knowing. Looking back, I realized that the answer wasn't going to arrive to me until it was in the moment, right? It was going to unfold. I wasn't going to get a message from higher self saying, this is the answer to your problem. This is the solution. The solution was just going to arrive as I was flowing through life in the moment of whatever it is I was doing. I have that awareness now, but I'm realizing I actually did have that awareness back then, but I didn't know I had that awareness. I was just doing it. So I just took my ego out of it step by step. And when we got to the hospital, I noticed the fear coming up, like I won't have a role, 3 parents is too many. What if Sophie doesn't want me there? And I just took my ego out of it every time. And then before you know it, a role just unfolded. And it was an important one. It was a simple role, but very important. What was my role? I made sure that they had yummy lunches. I made sure that if they needed something from the pharmacy or from wherever, I would go get it. The room didn't smell very nice, so I got some nice smelling room refresher. Like these little things, the little touches. I checked in on Mariella a lot. Are you okay? Do you need anything? How can I support you? I checked in on Sophie a lot. Sophie, are you okay? Do you need anything from me? And then, this is where it gets really good. At a certain point, the doctor came in and said, look, we've got options on this surgery. Because if we do the full surgery and we remove, because Sophie had scar tissue on her brain, which was causing the seizures. So the purpose of the surgery was actually to remove that scar tissue. But they realized that the scar tissue was bigger than they thought. So the doctor came in and, oh, by the way, he's one of the #1 brain surgeons in the United States and I think the world. I mean, this guy was an absolute genius. And he said, if we remove all the scar tissue, it is almost a certainty that there's going to be very, very big side effects. One of them being not having peripheral vision anymore. So not being able to see on the 2 sides. So losing your peripheral vision, that is a huge side effect. And that may not be worth it. You may think like having a seizure from time to time is better than losing that part of your vision. So there were big decisions. And this is where I came in, the spiritual person with access to the divine and access to Sophie's divine guidance team, which of course she has the #1 access to, but she was in a lot of fear. She was in a lot of discomfort. It was difficult for her to access and to know, well, is it my higher self or my fear talking or what is it? And that's where I could come in and be the untroubled space to come in and be the guide and offer her the guidance that she needed. And I let her know, look, you don't have to worry about big negative side effects from this surgery. And this was coming directly from her divine guidance team. And of course, I was fearful because I gathered her divine guidance team and I said, hey, look, this is Sophie and this is her life and this is her health. And however this surgery shapes out, we are talking about things that are irreversible. So if they do the brain surgery a certain way, and let's say she loses her peripheral vision, she will never get it back. You can't undo this surgery. Once it's done, it's done. These are huge things. So please do not send us down any rabbit hole. We're already in the rabbit hole, okay? So don't give me some guidance to give to her, to teach her a lesson. She's already learning the lessons. Just give it to me straight. If we don't have to worry about these big side effects, just say so. Or just say nothing, and I'll just tell Sophie I didn't get a message on that. But the message coming through very clearly was she doesn't have to worry about these potential big negative side effects. It's not going to happen. And I shared that with her, and I just could see just the relief washing over her, because Sophie's a very spiritual person. Now, had it been my son, Alexander, in the same situation, I might not have I probably would have offered to check in on his guides, but he might have said no, because he's not as into spirituality as Sophie is. And that would have been all A-okay. But Sophie asked for it. She wanted it. I convened her guides. I told her guides, give it to me straight. They did. And so far, since the surgery, and it's been a couple weeks now, there seems to be no big negative side effect from the surgery. She is doing amazingly. She has bounced back. She is back to her old self. She seems to be having, and we don't know what tomorrow will bring, but as far as we can tell, she's having a full recovery. The thing that we don't know is the extent to which the surgery will alleviate her seizures. And so that remains to be seen. But the big thing we know is that there wasn't any of the big potential negative side effects. And so the 2 weeks in the hospital were intense. And I mostly felt for Sophie because she was going through the brunt of it by a lot. But it was such a remarkable display of people showing up for the love of their child and any configuration it wants to look. And all three parents taking their ego out of it. And there are many examples of my husband doing it. Mariella obviously did it when she introduced me as Sophie's mom. Can you imagine a bigger example of just taking your ego out of it? And we all just took our ego out of it. And we were all just there for Sophie. And we were there for each other. Because it's also about being there for each other as the adults as well. It's not always just all about the kids. You got to think about yourself too and what you need on a soul level. And so we were thinking about Sophie and we were thinking about each other and just how we can love and support. So if you are going through something in life, whether it has to do with your family or something else where you're not sure what your role is, you're not sure what the value added, you feel like there might be competition or overlap or strife, I'm going to give to you what my higher self gave to me. I know you've heard it before, so don't be annoyed at me. Take your ego out of it and just see what happens. When I took my ego out of it, the big question I had was, what is my role in Sophie's life? And that answer got so beautifully presented to me in the unfolding of life. And I just got to witness my role playing out in live action time. And in a way that actually really satiated not only my higher self, but it satiated my ego. So when I took my ego out of it, I actually made my ego happy. Like, yeah, this is the role I want to be playing in Sophie's life. So when you get to those crossroads of I have a question, I don't know what's next, take a deep breath, release whatever needs to be released. Say the little mantra, now I take my ego out of it. Deep breath. Surrender to higher self and just surrender. Just surrender. Sometimes you don't even need the guidance. Sometimes you don't even need the message. Just go to the moment and just be. Watch your experience unfold. And sometimes the solutions unfold right before your eyes. My invitation for you this week is to do just that. Take your ego out of it, surrender to the moment, and watch your experience unfold. And that's a wrap for this 200th episode of Soul Guide Radio. I've received so many messages, reviews, emails, DMs throughout the years of people saying and sharing with me how much they've received from this podcast. And it's the one place in my business where I show up, rain or shine. There's no place else in my business other than beyond my paying clients. But this podcast is the only other place I show up, rain or shine. And sometimes I have to dig a little deeper to be here. And I'm always glad I did. I build in breaks. So I have breaks throughout the year built in. But it's just the place where I really want to be consistent. Every week, every Tuesday, you can count on a new episode from me. Only 4 weeks in August, I do release replays of the best 4 episodes of the year in different categories. And that's my 4 weeks of favorites, best of series. But that's still an episode being released every Tuesday. I want to eventually get to where I can release 2 new episodes a week, but not every week, where I'm occasionally dropping 2 new episodes in a week. But until I get there, and I want to flow there in alignment, following the voice of my higher self and not my ego. So until then, my commitment to you is 1 episode every Tuesday in your earbuds. And thank you for all you do to show up and support me and Soul Guide Radio. And as always, until next time, may your soul guide the way.